So thank you, Dan, for being with me right now. And
My pleasure. Why don't you take this thing off? You look so formal.
Thank you. You look so formal with your two colored socks. Is that on purpose?
That's on purpose. So many years ago, I travel a lot, and I discovered that if I just have socks that are really mismatched, it always looks okay.
Yeah.
So I pick a pile of socks, I throw them in the suitcase, I lose one. It's always okay.
Perfect. That's nice. And every time you get one lost, so
no problem.
Yeah. So I want to start with a question. It's something I've been wondering a lot. You're one of the most respected, relevant thought leaders in the field of behavioral economics and psychology and sociology and all of that stuff. And I would like to know, did you ever imagine you were going to be here? And when was the moment you thought, like, okay, now this is becoming true, if it ever was a dream?
So no, it wasn't a dream. It's still strange to think about it this way. I started kind of my, let's say, non-academic career outside, very selfishly. I actually wanted to write in a way that is more fun.
Yes.
When you think about your podcast, it's a video, audio. How much joy do you get from able to think in a different way and express ideas in a different way and capture things? That's the reason to do it. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, something happens, and it's both good and bad. It's good for all the obvious reasons. What it's bad is that sometimes I think that the endeavor of behavioral economics and social science in general is to question our beliefs. The challenge that I have sometimes is that I think that the whole point for social science and behavioral economics is to doubt what we know and to question and to basically say experiments are the way to solve it. And I think that sometimes I get to a situation where I go to a government or company or something, and I want them to do an experiment, and they want just my opinion and
just the answer.
Yes, and I like my opinions, but I still want to keep this. The honesty is that it's just my opinion, and there's a better way to do things. So the bad thing about, I think, having some authority is that it eliminates some of the reliance on objective data.
Yeah, they expect for you to go and give them the answer.
That's right.
And what happens with you in that case? Like, is it like a magic trick that once you know the magic, you can't stop seeing the sleight of hand, and now you know what I mean? Because you can do experiments, but in the same way you already know some of the.
That's right. And I'm getting better at predicting the results. So you can imagine that a physicist is somebody who can predict. It's interesting. So we're here recording. It's a big room. People are doing something. When you record, as you probably know, you start paying attention to noises that usually are just in the background.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, everything becomes a thing.
Yeah.
Somebody's talking, and you say, "Oh, it's," and it really disturbs you because you pay way too much attention to that and think about this. Yes. And then the person taking the trash. I think the same thing is true about social science. I go to a situation, and there's all kind of nuances that I pay attention to, and that helps me predict results. So often what I do, especially with companies, and I go and we propose an experiment and we do something, and then I ask them to say, okay, when we got it, let me guess what's the percentage of people in each condition, and there is a way to get better at this because you notice more of the nuances and details, and you can combine them. And my internal metaphor for things is often like an 8th grade physics problem. Okay. You have a ball or an object, and you have arrows going in different ways, and all of those are different forces. You say, what force is pushing this way, and what force is this, and what's against, and you do kind of an analysis of all the things for and against, and you try to come up with the sum of all of those.
And regarding that, I don't know if it turns, or it might turn, you knowing all the biases we have and stuff, into some sort of a paralysis, for analysis paralysis, you know, because you know every stuff. So how do you do it in your daily life? How do you take decisions? What would be your thought process? And I ask because many of us, we've read all of your books, we've read Kahneman's books, and you know, so we kind of also start getting enough information to know we know nothing, right? So what would you recommend for us, or what thought process should we take when we decide which projects to embark on or what to do?
So maybe it's useful to think about 3 types of decisions. There are little decisions. Buying coffee. That's probably not worth a lot of brain power and time and commitment. There are big decisions. Getting married, having kids, buying a house, moving, stuff like that. And there, I think that a big part of it is to think about which attributes of the decision we usually don't come to mind naturally. So think about housing. Commuting is a big thing. Everybody realizes commuting is a big thing. But if you look at the research, you realize that people don't get used to commuting. That it becomes more and more miserable. If you live in a place that has a good train, you get used to commuting. Get on the train, listen to a podcast, everything is good. If you're driving, it's always miserable, and you keep on not knowing if you'll get there or not, so it stays miserable. So you can think about creating attributes for the decision that other people might not think about. Or if you understand a long-term romantic relationship, right? You might think about things that otherwise you don't think about. So we have little decisions, don't spend time on big decision, think about what other attributes are, and then you can expand your decision, make it better. And then there's another category which are repeated decisions. And repeated decisions are a one-time decision, but they happen a lot, so their overall impact is larger.
Like a habit or something.
Like habit is very specific. I purposefully avoided that because habit is a kind of behavior that you stop thinking about, right? But going for a run is not a habit. It's not just like, oh, I'm running. No, you know you're running. It's not exactly a habit. But repeated decisions, and those I think we need to think about. Not all the time, but I think we need from time to time to say to ourselves, is this category of decision one that I'm doing right or wrong, and how do I want to fix it? And here, knowing decision making is helpful. And I'll give you one example for me. A few years ago, I realized I needed to lose a little bit of weight, and that I wasn't exercising. Like everyone, 90% of the people. So what I did was I made a deal with my cousin, and we had a very specific deal. And the deal was we have to exercise 3 times a week, and no dessert during the week, 1 dessert on the weekend. We can have dark chocolate, that's okay, but nothing else during the week. We defined what exercise is, half an hour of intense or an hour of non-intense. And we also have a punishment. So every week we have to report to each other, and if one of us missed, the other person gets to declare a punishment. And I've been doing, this is our 4th year of doing that. And it's a very, very effective system. But think about all the different elements. There's accountability. It's written in a very specific way.
Really defined and structured.
Yes. It's both the things I'm doing and the things I'm not doing. There's a reward connected to it. So when you think about repeated behavior like exercising, eating, and so on, the moment you understand decision making, things are much easier. So that's a good class of categories to think about. Personally, because I travel a lot, it's very hard for me to go running with a friend, right? But we know very well that if you can do that, that's really good. So I think we can think about, like you say, what is the expertise in decision making helping us? I think it can help us in designing an environment. So the big decision is just understanding in a better way. For the repeated decision is we're making a different decision environment for ourselves.
Perfect. Time's up. So one last question. With all that you've learned in your everyday life, your work, and your family and stuff, what are 3 things you've learned that you wouldn't want to forget ever? Like you want to have them present. It could be 3 things you live by, for example.
Maybe one of the most important elements of, I think, a happy life and motivational force is an agency, having the ability to make change. I think that, if you think about being a patient or an employee and having no agency, all of that is terrible. So having some say in which direction your life, your actions take is incredibly important for ourselves and for others. I think that's one. I think the second is trying to bring more of the long-term perspective into even short-term interactions. Yes. Whether it's social interactions or whatever you do, is try to have the long-term perspective, repeated game kind of an approach. And the third is, and that's going to be a tough one, it's to try and be okay with the trade-offs that we're making. Okay. And I'll give you an example. So I travel a lot, and for many years I would travel a lot. So I would not see my family, I would not be in the lab, and I always felt I was doing something wrong. I have lots of requests. If I do this, I don't do this, and I always think about all the things I'm not doing, and I always felt I was somehow inadequate. I'm at home, I'm not working. I'm at work, I'm not home. I'm in the US, I'm not in Africa. I'm in Africa, I'm not in the US. I'm in the lab. All of those things. And it took me a really long time to basically say, these are my trade-offs. I've made them. I'm happy to revisit them once a while, but as long as I've made them, I'm not going to feel the tension of feeling that I'm wrong. I've made these trade-offs, I thought about them, I decided to do it. This guilt component on top of that was incredibly unhelpful. Now, this is a very tough advice, because it's an advice that is all about internal reframing of how we do it, but it's been very helpful for me, so I hope it's helpful.
That's that. Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate it a lot.